Thank you to today's show sponsor, Azalea Orthopedics. They are a group of highly trained physicians and surgeons in East Texas that will meet all of your orthopedic needs. To learn more about Azalea Orthopedics, go to azaleaortho.com. That is azaleaortho.com. Welcome to Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. I am Dr. Grace English, founder of Deep in the Heart Ministries. We are a ministry that exists to tackle the hard realities of this life through the power of Jesus Christ. He is the only one that can set us free from our addictions, our negative thoughts and emotions, and bring us the true lasting healing and peace that He wants for our lives. Welcome to Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Getting Real to Heal. And today's topic is deliverance from drug addiction. Living in this broken world, so many of us, it's easy to numb ourselves out with something in this world, whether it's drugs, alcohol. It could be shopping, food, it could be pornography, it could be anything in this world that makes us want to escape the anxiety and the frustrations that we have to deal with in this broken world. And any addiction is literally going to end up destroying your life. And today's guest is Samantha DeVries, whose life was once dictated by drug addiction for many years, but Jesus Christ was the one who delivered her and set her free from that addiction, and today she's here to share her story with us. Samantha, she is serving as director of Hangers of Hope of Bethesda Health Clinic, and it's in Tyler, Texas. It's a clinic for the working and uninsured, and my husband, actually, John, is the CEO of Bethesda. And Sam, she's been married to her husband, Chris, for 5 years, and they have a grown daughter, Rainey, and a 12-year-old son, Asa, and she has 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way. It's so welcome to the show.
3 stepchildren.
3 stepchildren. Okay, awesome. Yep. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So Samantha, let's just dive in and tell me a little bit about your childhood.
So I was raised in Noonday, not far from here. We were raised in the country before any of that was built up. And my dad, he worked hard our whole lives. My mom and dad were married until he passed for 48 years. But he worked at Tyler Pipe, and so he worked hard. But he was an alcoholic as well. But we grew up poor, but we were never hungry. You know, we never. But he worked so hard our whole lives. Like he worked at Tyler Pipe, but he also would do lots of side jobs just to make sure that we were all fed.
Right.
So I have 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Was your mom a stay-at-home mom?
Yes.
Okay.
Until I started kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So did you go to church when you were young, growing up in the house?
Well, we did. My mom took us to church every Sunday, and we went every Wednesday night to a little Baptist church. Okay. So I was exposed to that at a really young age.
Right. I'm sure, though, watching your father struggle with alcohol, that actually had a pretty profound impact on you as a young child.
It did.
And so, but that's good. You were exposed to the gospel pretty early on.
Yes.
And so can you tell us, like, when was the first time you actually was introduced to alcohol?
Well, I mean, it was really young. I probably started drinking. Like, my dad would ask us to go get beers or whatever for him, and so I would drink half of it before, I gave it to him, little things like that. But when I got into middle school was when I really started drinking.
Okay. So it was really alcohol first that you were doing a lot of.
Yes.
And was your mom aware that
No.
So you were able to hide it?
Of course.
And your father as well didn't know?
No.
Okay.
They would never. So I will say he was an alcoholic, but he only drank like on the weekends, not during the week. But when he got drunk, it was pretty bad. But so my mom and dad, they would have never allowed me to drink if they'd known.
Okay.
Yeah.
So middle school is kind of when it started, and getting into high school, I'm sure it just only picked up.
Right.
And then when were you introduced to drugs?
I didn't start using drugs until I was 25. So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So the drug of choice was alcohol at first.
At first, yes.
It was the alcoholism and all that you were having a struggle with, and you continue to have that all the way through your young adult years.
Yes. And then, so basically I would work during the day, and then I worked at a bar at night. So, yeah, I drank every night as well until I got pregnant with my daughter at 21. And then I quit drinking.
Okay. Wow. So you just managed to hold a job down and still was,
oh, yeah. I mean, it was just, I only drank at night. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you ever think it was a problem for you? Did you even think about like, yeah, I really do need to stop drinking? Or was it something?
No, I mean, we just partied, during high school and all of that. I mean, pretty much everybody that I grew up with, that's what we did. We drank on the weekends. We drank at night.
Right.
So.
Okay. So when you had Rainey at 21, then that's when you stopped. And did you find that your life got a little bit stable after that? Or?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Having her saved my life for sure.
Okay.
Without a doubt. And so I continued to work, and I actually got married, not to her biological dad, but a man that I had met that was a few years older than me. And we married for the wrong reasons. And I actually divorced him when she was 3. Mm-hmm. And then I started, basically I was in the car business after that because I had to be able to support her on my own. And that's when I was introduced to drugs. So she was probably 4.
Wow. That's crazy.
I know.
You think at 25 years old.
I know. You would know better.
You would think that, it's young teenagers who are 14 and 15 who are being introduced to it.
Well, and it's like this. I didn't ever think I had a problem with alcohol. I just quit when I wanted to quit. Mm-hmm. And obviously it was for a really good reason for my daughter. But growing up with, basically both of my parents were addicts. My mother's addiction was food. Mm-hmm. She quit drinking when we were all little because of my dad's, alcoholism. But at the same time, I didn't realize that I would be an addict. And when I was 25, I was introduced. Basically, I was having to work like 14 hours a day. And so someone introduced me to speed, actually. Mm-hmm. And that was all. That was all it took.
Right. Because you could do everything that you needed to do.
Right.
And you just,
And I thought I was doing, exceptionally well. And for a long time, I was able to hide it and function and keep my job until I wasn't.
Okay. So weren't you exhausted or no?
All the time.
Okay.
All the time I was exhausted.
But you just kind of pushed through and...
You do what you have to do when you're a single mom, and especially trying to do all of it yourself without surrendering to the Lord. I had not done any of that. I mean, I knew who Jesus was. We went to Sunday school and we went to church, but I didn't live for him. I didn't surrender, and I definitely, not at all. So, yeah, it makes it... And you're trying to do all that on your own, and... You and I both know when you're living in sin, it just escalates.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one bad decision leads to bad consequences, which leads to more bad decisions and all of that. So you do mention that you knew who the Lord was, but he was not active in your life. You didn't really pay too much attention or took really, you didn't cultivate that relationship.
Right. I did not.
And so... and just living in the world and just being with other people who also don't know the Lord and are, you figured this is just normal.
Right.
And so how did the drug addiction start to really overtake your life?
So it gets to the point where, you're using all the time, and really, I lost my job eventually. And that escalated, and then I became homeless. So I will backtrack. I went to rehab before I lost my job. I actually went It was several things. I was not just alcohol, but it was pills that actually started before I ever did any type of speed. I was, like I said, selling cars and had a toothache. And so I was prescribed hydrocodone, and I very quickly got addicted to that. And so I would start buying it off the street because, it's the prescription wouldn't last long enough. And then I started using cocaine because of just interacting and mixing all types of drugs because, once I was introduced to it, that was pretty much all I wanted. But I did go to rehab before I was ever fired. My job offered, insurance and all of that. So I went to a 28-day residential rehab in Houston, and I stayed clean for probably 2 months after I got out because I wasn't ready and I was doing it for the wrong reasons. But eventually I lost that job, and that's when I started selling drugs.
Right. So you knew you had to make some sort of income, and so that was kind of like the next
and I had to feed my habit.
Well, right. And so after you got a rehab, then you lost your job, and then that's when you started selling it.
Yes.
Because you still were raising Rainey?
Yes. My parents were heavily involved with raising her too, though.
Okay.
So, because I was a single mom and I worked a lot of hours before I was fired, my mom and my dad helped me a lot with her.
Okay.
My dad actually quit drinking when his first grandchild was born.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so they obviously cared about and wanted to help you.
Of course,
but they really couldn't really help you as far as you being able to fully be delivered from the addiction and all that,
Yes.
And so...
and my mom was a bit of an enabler.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
without it, I was just her baby and she wanted to help me. But she didn't realize that it wasn't helping me, so.
Right. So when did you, so how long did you sell for? Like 2-3 years?
I know, I sold for almost 20 years.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Samantha. Okay. You were never afraid for your life?
No, that was the one thing that, so I was kind of born without fear. I was actually the psychologist that talked to me while I was in the inpatient rehab, said that I had no self-preservation whatsoever, and which is obviously a bad thing because that's what keeps you alive. So, I didn't have any fear of any of that. But I will say this. From the time I was little, I knew who Jesus was. We went to church. I knew that he was real, but I just did not think that he was for me. Not because I didn't want him, but just because of all the things that I was doing. I didn't fully realize how much he actually loved me. But he never left me during my entire addiction. He never left me. And that was the one thing that I think kind of saved me throughout my whole addiction was I knew that he loved me. Like that truth was ingrained in me, and that was something the evil one could never take away. I knew that I wasn't living for him. I knew that he was not happy with me, but that he loved me.
Right. So you still felt his presence even when you were living, leading a life where, it was destroying you. And, but you just kind of knew that he was always in the background. But you never really, you probably felt very unworthy.
Absolutely.
Of even being in his presence because of all the things that you had chosen to do, And so many people feel that way, Samantha, who have lived a worldly life and they just feel like, Jesus, there's no way, how could he love me, a sinner like me? And
that's something that the evil one...
right.
So if you know who Jesus is and you were raised, spiritually, then that's a double torment.
Right.
You know that you're not living the way that Jesus wants you to. And then the evil one is in your head going, how could he love you? Look at what you're doing.
Right.
And you know better. So.
Right. So when was the first time you were arrested?
I was 29 years old. I turned 30 in jail the first time I was arrested.
Okay.
And it was for possession. And because my bond was so high, I stayed in Smith County until I went to court. But because it was my first offense and I'd never been in trouble, I got intense supervision, probation.
Okay. Probation. Okay.
Yeah, deferred probation is what it's called.
Right. Did that shake you up any, or?
Well, actually, after I got out, yes. I mean, every time that I was locked up, I benefited because, number one, I was alive, and my daughter was with my parents at that time, and I always benefited because it sat me down, and I got closer to the Lord every time.
When you were in prison?
Well, yes, so I never really had to go to prison. I went to jail and state jail, which is a little different than prison, but you're still locked up and you lose your freedom. But when I got out, I actually completed the probation and I stayed clean for 6 years.
Oh, you did?
Well,
Wow.
Okay. So I was clean off methamphetamines, which is actually, once I got introduced to that, was my drug of choice. I quit drinking, quit taking pills and everything. Meth was the only thing that I did. But basically what I did was I got on legal speed, which is Adipex. You can go to a weight doctor and they will.
Yeah. Right.
So that's how I completed the probation, was because I had a prescription for that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, yeah, but I mean, that's not clean. That was just
right.
defeating. I mean, that was basically, getting past the system.
Right.
So that I could still have whatever it was, which is, well, I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I would actually pay people to go to the doctor to get those prescriptions for me so that I could double the prescriptions. Yeah.
Wow. So you could have theirs.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, it was terrible.
So you still knew you were still caught.
Yeah, I still had
this whole web of.
Yeah, I hadn't.
Yeah.
I was just trading one addiction for another.
Right. So how long did you continue doing that? I mean, I know that at some point you had your son.
Yes.
And, Rainey is being taken care of by your folks and
my ex-husband. And so
right.
I went through years of being on and off drugs, but mostly on.
Yeah.
So after I got out of jail the first time and was on probation, I went back to selling cars, which was stupid, but it was the only way I could really, and I stayed clean for a little while there. But once I started using drugs again, it got to the point where they had to let me go again. And then I just started selling it again. So
it's just a vicious cycle.
It is.
Did you ever think about, ever cry out to God for just the craziness?
All the time.
Okay. So.
But it was never a surrender. I knew once the evil one gets inside your head and one bad decision leads to another, then you're surviving minute to minute and you really don't see anything else. You're just trying to make it to the next minute. And when you look back and you realize all of the things that you've done, there was actually a time I considered ending my life because I had just resigned myself to that's what I was going to be. I'd been through rehab. I'd been locked up off and on for short amounts of time, but off and on a lot. And each time I got closer to God, I would read the Word. And when my son is 13, almost 13. He's 12 now. Before that, I had an abortion when my daughter was probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
And that probably sealed my fate for me because that goes against everything that I believe. But at the same time, I was trying to get through this probation, trying to get my daughter back at this time from my ex-husband.
Right.
And it was just, I didn't see any way out of that. I couldn't take care of her. I couldn't take care of myself. There was no way I could take care of another baby. And again, not relying on the Lord, not surrendering. And so after that, it was horrible because it didn't take, and I had to go back.
Oh, the abortion?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it almost killed me, actually. So
Wow.
that was horrible. And once I got through that, I was just going through the motions.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was just a shell of a person at that point.
well, I did not realize that you had an abortion in your past, and so that explains why the drugs and the numbing and all of that, the escape, only accelerates after you've had an abortion, because there's so much guilt and shame from it, and you do disappear. You're just like, I'm not even sure I'm alive today, and you're just walking like a zombie because you don't want to think or feel.
That's exactly right.
And so that is definitely a very strong negative thing that has happened to you that probably fueled the drug addiction even more, and the selling and all that. And so what happened when that day when you finally did surrender to the Lord?
So that was almost 5 years ago. My husband and I we weren't married then, but we met in our addiction. And we were together for a short time before he went to prison. And he was in prison for 2 years. And in the midst of that time, there was lots of things that had happened. I mean, I'd had my son, and my brother and his wife adopted him. And, I didn't really have, to be honest with you, I mean, I shouldn't have ever been able to know where he was after that point. But I didn't find out that I was pregnant until I was 6 months. And I was running from the law. I was homeless, and I was moving from county to county to stay ahead of the law.
Yeah.
When I found out I was pregnant, and I just remember looking up to God going, why would you do this to a baby? I don't get this. But he had a bigger and better plan. And so my brother and his wife adopted him, which was amazing and wonderful. And he knows who I am. He knows that I'm his birth mother.
Right.
But they are his mom and dad. And my brother's amazing. He's been saved since he was 14.
Right.
So,
and he's been probably trying to speak into your life for a lot of years.
The only reason that I'm sitting here now is because of so many people praying for me.
Right.
And so when all of that happened, and I realized, and I've never regretted signing my son over, because that is exactly an answered prayer. The whole time after I realized I was pregnant, I would ask the Lord, please don't make him pay for my addiction. I mean, I hated myself every single day.
Yeah.
But I didn't, hindsight is 20/20. There is about 10 different decisions I could have made that would have taken me out of that. But again, when you're in the middle of all of that, you can't see,
it's a stronghold.
1 minute ahead.
Right.
And I just didn't see a way out.
Right.
But the Lord provided a way out. And so move forward a little bit to 5 years ago. And I remember just being resigned again. And my boyfriend at that time had gone to prison. So I just left East Texas and went to several different places. I used to run illegal gambling rooms in East Texas. It was, anything. Yeah.
Okay.
It was horrible. But I was in Jefferson, Texas, and I'd pretty much resigned myself. I was trying to get away from East Texas. And I just remember I was homeless. I didn't have any money. And I had drove in a truck that I had that was on its last leg. And I went by the river and I just started praying. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So something has to happen. And I said, Lord, I need help. I can't do this on my own. I mean, I was, 44 years old.
Yeah.
And I'd pretty much was losing, the relationship with my daughter that was tumultuous at best because of all the things I had put her through.
Right.
And then, my son was taken care of, but myself, I was a shell. I had never really had the time to look back and take responsibility for anything I had done and all the lives that I had ruined. And I just remember I was laying, on the ground by the river just praying.
Right.
And the next day is when my husband found me.
Oh, do you just pass out?
No, I had been praying, and I was basically sleeping in my truck.
Oh, okay.
But I was technology is crazy, but I don't have social media. But at that time, the only way I could get a hold of my daughter was through Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to a gas station and connected to their Wi-Fi, downloaded Messenger so I could get a hold of my daughter. And my husband now messaged me through Messenger.
Okay.
And I hadn't talked to him in 2 years.
Really?
He had got out of prison and was looking for me. And he went to my mom's house every 2 weeks because he had a job where he worked 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really bring any of this home to my parents or to my family. Like, I would come through every now and then and let her know that I'm okay. But I didn't bring the drugs or anything I was doing to my family. So she really couldn't tell him where I was. And so it was just like in that 10-minute window that I had downloaded Messenger that he messaged me.
Well, that's a miracle. And so is that when you finally felt released?
Yes.
From the bondage of the drugs?
So after he messaged me, he came and actually picked me up from Jefferson, Texas. And I say this all the time. The Lord and my husband picked me up right out of the gutter. And I was delivered from that day.
Right.
And
never have used since.
Nothing.
This is 6
I don't even
year
want
clean. To. Wow. And what was it like? God just turned a switch on?
Yes, it was amazing.
Okay.
So, like I said, I'd always had a relationship with the Lord, and the one thing that the devil could never take away from me is that no matter what we do, Jesus loves us. So I never lost that.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing wrong. I was none of it, but I always knew that he loved me. And when my husband came and he found me, we got a little place together, and within a month we were married and baptized on the same day. My brother is an ordained minister, so we just completely started over, and we've never looked back.
So all those years, you finally confessed and repented of all the things that you had done.
And it's funny that you say, I did. I'm very grateful, and I'm so blessed because when I was delivered, I was delivered.
Right.
I have never wanted to do drugs. And, the Lord showed me what my future could be, and I grabbed on with both hands and feet, and I've never looked back.
And you made him central in your life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You were listening to him.
I pursued him as much more than I've ever pursued any drug.
Right. And you weren't listening to Samantha anymore. You weren't listening to the voices and of what can I do immediately to try to solve the situation. Right. And your eyes finally then just, got hooked onto Christ, and because you knew he was the only person that would be able to get you out of
all of the lies that I had been believing my entire life, they just weren't true. And it was like a veil had been lifted, the scales were had fell off, and he was just there loving, redeeming, and absolutely gave me everything that I had been asking for.
He's been waiting in an instant, for you, right?
In an instant. And he said, "So what now?" And I just surrendered. I basically fell on my knees, and it was amazing, and I love it. And I just want everyone to know that is what he wants all of us to do. It does not matter what we've done. There is nothing that we can do that will ever stop his love for us. And there's nothing that he can't wash clean. None of that.
Amen. I know.
And he's, you just have to proclaim it, every single day. I never lose sight. It's kind of like that happened to a different person. I knew it was me, and there are things that pop up, that I'm like, Lord, I never asked forgiveness for that. I'm asking for forgiveness for that. I know that I'm already forgiven, but you have to.
But it's good. He wants us to confess and repent.
Yeah.
And from the depths of our soul, and he does. Like, I remember when I was in college, right after I had my abortion, I went into a 4-year cycle of just using drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And even getting saved, a year or two later, it's still, God will bring memories from that time where I'm like, Lord, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, when I look as well, like you said, that was a different person that I was, but those memories still are etched in my mind. And when he brings it to our conscience, he does want us to repent and confess. And because it is, and he forgives, and it's no longer a part of us anymore.
Right, exactly.
And
it's not, when I remember those things, it's not condemning me.
It's not.
It's setting me free.
It is.
And so that's what people don't, the Lord does not condemn us. He wants us to be saved. That's, he wants us to be the men and women that he created us to be. But when the evil one gets in there, and we start believing those lies,
right,
when the truth is right in front of us, and it's so much simpler,
right,
then we just, he makes it so complicated. The evil one says, oh, you have to do this and this and this, and that is not the truth.
Right.
All we have to do is surrender, and Jesus allows us to do all of that. And it is a lifelong journey. There are several things, like I said, that I know that I can be better at, and I pray every day, Lord, show me the things that I need to repent on, but also what I can improve on, because once he had that compassion for me, I have that love for everyone else, which I didn't before. I wasn't a people person. I didn't have any compassion, especially for women, because I couldn't stand myself. And so, do you know what I mean?
He's taught you a lot. I mean, you hated yourself. You hated the woman that you had become.
Exactly.
And so you probably had a very jaded view of other women.
Yes.
But once you taste the grace of his forgiveness, how can you not share? Right. It's wonderful. Like, how can you not share this wonderful, secret per se, and because it's life-changing.
Yeah, it is.
And, and I'm so glad that he preserved your life, Samantha. I mean, many, many times you could have been dead in a ditch somewhere. And,
I lived my life in that way. I was never suicidal, but there were times when I was just so tired of living that way that I didn't want to live anymore. Right. So, I don't know if you can, there's a difference. Like, I didn't walk around wanting to kill myself every day. I just didn't want to live that way anymore. And so the lie that's embedded in your head is, well, you're not going to live any other way. This is who you're going to be for the rest of your life. So you might as well just end it.
Right. Right.
I was not, that was another thing, I was living a double life. I knew the truth, and I knew what I was doing was wrong, but at the same time, I couldn't find myself a way out of it. And so I would dare people every day to kill me. And the life that I was living, it was very dangerous. And so I lived, basically with that in mind, like, all the time.
Yeah, you didn't even really care at that point whether or not you were alive or dead, probably.
I didn't. But the only reason that kept me going was my daughter, because I knew what I had put her through was horrible. She was moved from so many different people. And, but, and when I got clean and when I was older, and our relationship is wonderful now by the grace of God.
Yes.
She doesn't hate the sight of me. That's the grace of God right there. And she always was my biggest fan and my biggest defender. But I was so selfish. I was so selfish, but I just love her. But she said that her biggest fear during that whole time, all of those years, was not that I would die, but that I would get caught killing somebody else and spend the rest of my life in prison. And I was like, what a horrible way. That was just the tip of the iceberg of the way she had to grow up, because I lived a dangerous life.
Right. And so, I mean, she never, obviously, she stayed away from drugs,
She
alcohol.
can't stand. Yes,
She's a believer. She
is now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and
Okay.
she is. She's amazing.
Wow.
She's an amazing woman.
Well, God has done a lot of healing restoration in such a short time.
Yes.
In your life.
It's like a
Samantha.
Yes.
So night and day. Did you ever have to go through counseling or anything like that?
So I've been through counseling before,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it was wonderful. Like when I was going through the inpatient rehab, that counselor there was amazing, and he told me a lot of things about myself that it made perfect sense, but I had never known. And so it was like the defeatist cycle of addiction. So my dad, was an alcoholic, but he loved us. There was never a doubt in my mind that he loved us. But when he was on alcohol, I mean, he was mean. He was very mean. But sober, he was one of the most respected men that I knew, and he loved us. He told us that he loved us, and all of that. So it was kind of, it was very strange to because he never remembered all of the bad stuff.
Right.
We remembered, but he was drunk, so he didn't remember.
Right.
But so fast forward all of that, it did take a toll. But my mom and dad loved us, and like I said, they were together till they were married for 48 years. And so it was, I mean, dysfunctional, but there was love there.
Right. But I'm sure, part of the drinking and all that, you had to go back into like the areas of your life that you were still holding on to anger and bitterness and, because you do have to go back there and confess and repent over that and, receive your father and accept him for who he is because he had his own struggles.
Right.
But as a young child, you had a dysfunctional childhood, and so I'm not saying our parents are never responsible for our choices.
Right.
They aren't. And so, but they can definitely influence the way that we think and what we do as young children and teenagers and stuff. And so, but no parent is perfect. We're not perfect.
Right.
That's why the Lord came, because he knew we were all going to mess up.
Yeah.
Some worse than others, and we all are going to sin each and every day until we see him.
Right.
So it's just understanding and giving ourselves that grace to know that and asking others for forgiveness.
Absolutely. And then forgiving our parents for being human too.
Right.
You don't really realize that until you're older that, they had a whole life before you, and they brought all this, baggage and damage from their childhoods.
Right.
And so once you forgive them, it's a lot easier.
Right.
You really can let all that go. And the counseling, I mean, I have been through counseling, and it's wonderful. It's a great tool. But if you don't do it without Jesus, if you have
right. Jesus is not as involved, then that's not going to last.
Exactly.
So y'all are active in your church, and you never look back.
No.
Walking forward. No. And, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, how so many times God gave you so many chances and preserved your life.
Well, he
Samantha,
does. He does, because he loves us.
He does. And, for all the stupid things that we've done, he still chooses us.
Yes.
And he's always pursuing us. So.
And that's another thing. Like, I pursue him daily because I'm so grateful. And, and I'm not judgmental anymore. And like I said, I have compassion for everyone else. And I can see things, from my point of view, I can see why people do the things they do. Whereas before I had zero tolerance. I was so judgmental. And then I ended up doing far worse things than they ever did. Right. And so he instructed us to love each other the way he loves us. And so every day, that's what I ask him for. How do I do that? Show me better, because I want to love the way you love me. Right. Because you literally picked me up out of the gutter and said, hey, I have everything that you've ever wanted, and I can do so much more for you than you can for yourself, and you just have to accept it. It's just a gift because I love you. That's the hardest thing in the world for us to do, is just to accept that he loves us. And every step that we take is something he wants, to have purpose in.
Exactly. So while you were talking, Isaiah 61:1 is what you were just speaking about, and I'm going to read it. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Girl, you've walked through that,
Right.
and see how he's using you now to minister to other people where you were, and you totally get it.
Yeah.
You totally understand that. And so I do want to conclude, because God has done such a radical change in your life. I actually asked my husband what he thought about you.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to read it.
Oh, okay.
And so he says, Sam truly cares about all of her employees, and it shows in her store evaluations and surveys on leadership. Her Hangers of Hope store scored the highest in almost all the categories in our last Best Christian Workplace survey. She is someone who is not afraid to share how God has worked in her life and is an inspiration to those fortunate to work for her. Her testimony is a great example of how God can redeem and use her struggles to bring him glory.
Oh, wow.
And so, yes, it was absolutely precious. And so I wanted to conclude on that and to let you know,
Thank you.
You are valued, and, you were valued even when you were in the drug addiction.
Right.
Yeah. But praise be to God, he delivered you, Samantha.
Yes.
And no more going back, and now you are able to just have this compassion for others.
Yes.
And tell them about Jesus, because he is the only way that they are going to pull through that.
Yes.
And how he can transform your life totally.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful.
And so, yes, in your relationship with your son, y'all have a good relationship, and your brothers and his wife.
They're amazing.
They are absolutely amazing.
Yes. And, the Lord has done so much in my family. Both of my brothers and my sister and myself, my dad was saved before he died. My mother was saved. Both of my brothers are saved. My sister is saved. And so how he's worked through all of our family. And there are several cousins that were alcoholics. We all came through that. And they've all come to the Lord. They've all been delivered. And so he's done so much in my entire family that it's amazing. You can't deny that it was him.
Right. The power of him and how he has all of us in eternity.
Absolutely.
Because we are his, and we are free from the bondage.
Amen.
From those addictions. And so, but anyhow, thank you so much for your powerful story,
having me.
Samantha.
Thank you.
And if you want to get a hold of Samantha, she does have an email that we are going to put in our show notes, and it's Samantha DeVries, DeVries, 1221 @gmail.com. And I'm sure she would love to talk to you if you're struggling with, a similar addiction and walking that life or
have a loved one that is going through that. Just don't stop praying. Don't stop praying for them.
Right. And to know that Jesus is still there, even though you could be very, very far away making really poor choices. His eyes are still on you.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't let go.
No, he doesn't.
But thank you so much.
Thank you,
Samantha.
Thank you, Dr. Grace.
Well, thank you for joining us for today's Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. We will see you the next time. Bye now. Thank you to today's show sponsor, Express Employment Professionals. They are the leading staffing agency in East Texas, and they have helped thousands of businesses and companies find the right employees. If you are somebody that's looking for a job, Express Employment Professionals can also help you. Go to expresspros.com. That is expresspros.com. If you liked what you heard today and you want these Jesus stories to go out into the world, please consider giving to deepintheheartministries.com. You can also get a hold of me at grace@drgraceenglish.com.